if you're a dentist and you're growing, you get romantic about one day someone's going to give me this bananas offer, right? And that becomes like your drive, maybe. As going through this several times, and Trey, I think you alluded to kind of feeling the same way when we talked about this, is that there's a lot of realizations when someone's willing to give you a check to walk away or to buy your business, and you have to pause for a second and think, who's the dummy here? Is it me or is it them? Right? Who's getting the best deal? And even when it's a bananas offer, let's just say, right, something let's call it 250% of your top line revenue or 200% of your top line revenue, and you think like, holy shit, this is a lot of money. When you start to reverse engineer, okay, I'm going to get this up front, because it's not going to be all the money up front. We've talked about that ad nauseum on this pod, right? The cash at close is this, the stock you're going to get is this, unless you're selling from one person to another, at which point multiples and stuff don't go into play.
Right.
So you have to kind of reverse engineer. Okay, this is the cash at close is potentially all I'm going to get. Now my tax rate's going to be this. Okay. And now I'm left with X in the bank. How does that compare to the cash flow that you get from running a business?
You roll, man.
Okay.
You roll. I thought you were going to do a Chat GPT one.
No. You know what? Actually, it's funny. I'm glad you brought this up. I actually tried. I could not convince. It was basically saying, I will not do this because that's mean, essentially, right? I will not roast because that's mean. And I couldn't hack my way through prompts to get it to do it.
Yeah.
I was kind of like, and usually you can hack if GPT gives you some pushback on something saying, well, I'm not really qualified to do that. You just say, well, act like this person,
Right.
give me the response, right? They will do it via proxy almost.
Right.
It wouldn't do it. And then it didn't have enough context on like who we were, right? As much as I tried to give it. Anyway, it was a fun idea, and I was hoping we could do an AI chat roast. But guess what, Dwight? You are safe from disruption in this department for now.
I give myself another year of no disruption, right?
Yes. By the time GPT-4 comes around, you're probably screwed.
I'm wrecked. Yeah. The more
right.
content we output here to give it more content, like maybe I am feeding future roasts. Like maybe that's the way to go. But with Craig not on this call, we should have all three had an individual roast for him.
Yeah, you know what? As a I don't know, Sensi Pants, he might not. It might not work well.
That was when I realized that he was getting a little upset, because it was after all my roasts started going in. He was like, Dwight, you've changed.
Dwight, you're pushing hard. Speaking of the Chat GPT, did you guys see the reveal from Google's answer in response to, because there was tremendous amount of pressure on Google. Everyone was saying, holy shit, this disrupts. This changes it from a search engine marketing to a find engine, right? We've always been searching for the answer, and now we're finding, and now GPT is allowing us to find it. So it's changing the whole dynamics of that. Yeah. And so they answered with Bard, correct, Dwight? And do y'all know what happened? Did y'all see what happened?
Messed it up, huh?
Did, man. So there was a team that was responsible for, I guess they did this in another country. I want to say it was Spain. And they were announcing some other things like new features on Google Maps and whatnot. But basically they were kind of saying, hey, and now we're announcing Bard in response to Chat GPT. Well, what happened was someone asked, as they tested it, someone asked, hey, Bard, what's the new developments for the James Webb Telescope that I can tell my 9-year-old about? And it responded, and it said, basically it incorrectly showed a picture of a telescope that took the first pictures of our solar system. And basically there was the meteorologist or the astrology world kind of was like, no, it's incorrect. We actually had pictures from 2004. Long story short, it essentially, their one debut at this smart computer model gave an incorrect answer. So they lost 7% of their share price, which was
how much was that?
$100 billion. They lost in a day.
Ouch.
And
Whoops.
so they are behind. It is apparently code red at. Not that I freaking know, but I mean, from what I hear on the Twitter web, is that it's code red at Google, and a lot of people got fired for that presentation because it was just a colossal failure.
That's the equivalent of Elon Musk sharing his Tesla truck, the Cybertruck, and then showing bulletproof windows. And then
you know what, Dwight? I would agree with you on that. Right. There's been some like catastrophic reveals, right?
Right.
But Twitter, but didn't the truck sales go like off the charts from that?
Oh yeah. Either way, just even those crazy, funky looking truck, it's still like, what can you have access to? But that's the consumer,
right? But I think I mean, I've got a reservation for one, just because, like, yeah, I want one.
Me too.
Me too. Never just because. Trey, do you have one?
I don't.
Oh man,
I believe in diesel.
we're gonna get.
I'll sell mine to you.
Anyway, it was an interesting thing, right? Because to me, it was a great example of rushing to the consensus of what people wanted you to do, right? And so it was like, hey, do this, and we're waiting for a response, and they rushed to it, and they shit the bed, and to the tune of $100 million mistake. They will probably recover, but I think that look, it's like we always talk about, even with dentistry, it's a first mover advantage you have, and when you have first mover advantage, you get to create the rules, so to speak. So playing catch up sucks, as we've all done that in either a market we've entered or a startup we've done or a practice we've acquired, or playing catch up sucks. So that was my loop back into dentistry,
especially when you're a distant second.
Yeah,
true story, Trey. True story. It's almost
it's when someone's clawing into position, it never comes out as nice as it needs to be, right? Everybody's got the advantage on that, but you've almost got to reinvent yourself with a totally new perspective on what it is you're doing. And I think that's what initially Bard just tried to come out just strong, but then they lofted little balls at it. And I'm like, you got to control the environment. This is your first jump in. I mean, it was kind of a sad showing, to say the least, especially being Google, because that is their biggest fear this year, is that Google search will be disrupted. And this will be, that piece.
Look, it's how they make. I mean, the whole business model makes money. And we saw on kind of the All In podcast how profitable search is.
Yeah, meaning, I think they're 93% of the industry right now.
93%, and the profit margin is literally, like, from a compute standpoint, is literally like they make like 90% of the dollars they make.
Yeah, it's insane.
And they just literally, I mean, I think it was Chamath was saying, like, they can't find ways to spend all the money they're making, and so this disruption could be costly, and so I'm pretty bullish on Microsoft and Bill Gates, even though he's a whatever. Did you guys? I don't want to get, I didn't want to get into like a political and a COVID thing.
Yeah, good move. Bail.
I couldn't help it. He's so, he's so whatever. That was actually the funniest part of. Did you guys watch the Australian Open?
I did not. I missed it.
The tennis Australian Open.
I missed it.
You know who won? Djokovic won.
Oh yeah,
and he was banned the prior year. So
that's right. Yeah.
Gates is in the audience in the finals, and he was banned the year prior in Australia because of COVID, because not taking the jab.
Yeah, they wouldn't allow
and so to come back and win, it was like the internet was, Twitter of course was going funny with it, like saying, imagine banning this person, and them coming back and winning, and the taste of victory, blah blah blah.
Well, go to your previous comment. I think that there will be an AI part of every single podcast you do this year, because it's rapidly progressing and blowing and going. And now there's talks about whether it can lie, whether it can do this. So I wouldn't be surprised if every time we get on, there's a little piece of something that's developed. So,
and I would encourage people, Dwight, to encourage that or mute that on us, because we live in this echo chamber. And so comment if you like. Like Sharisa actually said, I was talking to her the other day, and she's like, I know you've been mentioning AI and stuff a lot on your pod. And I was like, am I? And you don't want to become so in your own head that that becomes like you think what's important for everybody else to hear.
Well, just because I think it's important. I mean, we had little office hours with the Mastermind earlier today. And I mean, there was a little AI talk at the beginning, just one little comment. And then that spiraled into, well, what should we prepping our practices for? Like, what are the things? And I think that was a cool, I mean, that
morphed into a KPI and get your head out of the sand. And what are we looking for?
What are we looking for? And I think that's cool. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, we're going to live in this environment, and as every industry is. So I don't think you can put your head in the sand on this one. There's a lot of stuff you can blow off politically and all that. But this is something,
especially Dwight. Pardon my interruption. I'm making a conscious effort to not interrupt anymore on the pod.
He said New Year's goals.
He Spodexed me.
What did you guys see? And I know I sent this on like the Mighty Networks and such, and I'm going to talk about it. And Dwight, I know you just printed it out. Trey, if you had a chance to look through it, but there's not many times where I get like a giant PDF where I feel called to print it out, right? But there are several times, meaning like the Naval master tweet storm, I printed that out and bound it in a PDF. So there's not many times, but this was one of those times. I got it from ARK, and so ARK is led by a pretty legendary investor named Cathie Wood. Hasn't done so well in the previous 2 years, let's call it, because it's usually highly tech based.
Yeah,
they come out with a. I mean, Dwight, would you call it like a prognostication guide? But it's essentially what they see in the next
what they're investing
future,
in, what they're
investing in, and what they see, how they see our world to look based on based on the technologies that are present. And so this one was it's called the Big Ideas 2023, and it's looking for, and I kept seeing a 2030 extrapolation of the data.
Yeah, and
you can tell by the way they did this. This wasn't someone's opinion. This was highly fact-based. If you look at the citations, Dwight, and you're doing. And so why am I, you must say, like, why is this a big deal? You're a dentist. Like, why does this matter? And again, Dwight, back to what you're saying about getting your head up out of the sand, because this may be that inflection point in technology that all of a sudden, like I said on the last pod, turns us into this fourth industrial revolution. Mm-hmm. And so the thing that resonated with me on this was and we actually did speak about this, but I wasn't as eloquent be able to speak about it last time because I didn't have the data. I hadn't had this in front of me, is that the power isn't so much AI. The power isn't so much the blockchains. The power isn't so much energy storage. It's the convergence of all those things that are happening. And so it's the rising tide. And basically what they're saying is AI now becomes the accelerant for multi-omic sequencing, robotics, energy storage, public blockchain, and AI, and the neural network standpoint. And those are the 5 things that she says, they're anticipating becoming the large share of this technological economy in the future. I'm
going to take a quick quote to kind of align that I read earlier, and I marked it, and it says AI should increase the productivity of knowledge workers more than 4-fold by 2030. And at 100% adoption, AI could increase the global labor productivity by 200 trillion, dwarfing the 32 trillion in total knowledge worker salaries. I mean, it's fuel to fire isn't like a 1% of what we're talking about. And I'm with you. I think if these are the kinds of things that in life, like there's political issues, there's things out there, there's social issues. I get it. All these things can slightly disrupt different things, but this is a complete disruptor. And like computers were, like internet was. I mean, we've got to be prepared for this.
Trey, what do you say?
I think that
I know you haven't read it, so I'm not putting you on the spot.
Yeah, no. But I mean, I think that touching on what you said earlier about AI and how or what you mentioned, it's going to be part of every pod we do. It is something that fuels the fire that's going to change everything and bring about that fourth industrial revolution. When you look at ARK, I mean, ARK isn't just tech. ARK is pretty cutting edge tech.
Mm-hmm.
And ARK either explodes or falls flat on its face. But
exactly.
But the thought process and the theory of what she's
putting
out there is really pretty right. It's pretty awesome. And I mean, how many times when you look back, even just through our lifetimes, that you've had any sort of tech jump in and not just dominate, but completely change the paradigm and the landscape of how we live our lives.
Yeah.
And this is doing exactly that for exactly what you mentioned. It's the substructure underneath all this stuff that, we're looking at, excited about ChatGPT, finding answers, that type of thing. But the blockchain, everything underneath is what's going to bring about an entirely different program driving forward.
It's really cool. Whenever my wife makes fun of me about being like a nerd and like, why do you look at this stuff and why do you watch this YouTube? And even my kids do, like, what, Dad, who cares about this? Like, watch TikTok with us. Like, who cares? I'm like, I may be wrong on this stuff. And I always, and my line is like, history is going to prove one of us correct when Craig and I argue about shit. But my thesis is A, it's interesting, and B, this is probably not going to make me stupider.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Right?
Yeah.
I mean, so yes, you could be wrong. Yes, Kathy could be wrong, but me digging in and learning is like, okay, it's a heads up play for the next 7 years. Yes, I am, JFD, just a dentist, but yes, I'm also, but all of us are just not dentists. We are investors, and we are looking for financial futures, and we are consumers, and we are in groups, and we have conversations. So like these kind of things, it's just nice to keep your head up out of the sand, even if it's not just for the business of dentistry.
Well,
Right?
think about it from the standpoint. I was thinking about this the other day. I have little kids. Think about what their lives are going to be like 40 years from now. Think about them in our situation, what they've seen, I didn't have a cell phone in college.
Right.
No, that changes the whole game of virtually everything you do once you have that. Facebook, social media pops up. I mean, it's a different way of life.
Yep. It changes. Remember when you did get your first cell phone and you had a bucket of minutes and you would literally speak to people like a telegraph?
Yeah.
I miss those days.
You're flying through it. Yeah.
Would have been easier.
I only have 120 minutes from my PowerTel subscription. Can you please speak faster?
To speak
think
to that
about how
too,
productive we
I
are
miss
now.
those days.
Yeah,
I
I know.
do too. I want to go back to the beeper.
There's some simplicity of joy, because today it's like we can't disconnect, we can't this and that, but we are far more productive when we want to be. It's funny, and now it's like you can sign up to go to a resort where like you can forcibly disconnect, and people are now paying to go back in time, be what that is. But you can imagine, I mean, this is going to make us so much more productive.
Can I pause you there, Dwight? Can I pause you there?
Yeah.
Because I think this is the argument online where people are like, turn it off the AI. It's scaring us. It's gonna. And so there's a group of people, and it's probably split down the middle, where it's like, this is going to disrupt us. This is scary. This could cause problems. And there's another half of the segment that's like, this is not going to disrupt anyone. It's just going to make those who want to become more productive 7 times more productive.
Which
right?
is always history.
It's a weird. It's a weird dichotomy of the population. It's like,
that's early adopters, late adopters, forced
Mm-hmm.
adopters. I mean, this is human history.
Mindset.
Yeah, it's human history, and it's a drag because people they want to accept it once they've seen other people fall flat on their face, and then they're willing to kind of accept the remnants. But it's not a matter of I think a lot of us, even in this, between the three of us, we like the idea of being a little bit more on the edge, being that first in, and kind of enjoying that. But in reality, some people are less driven in that sense. They want to do it as a collective. They want to move forward. They want to do those things. That's fine. But in the grand scheme of it, to me, it's an exciting time to live. It's an exciting time to run a business. And I'm with you, Trey. I think it's interesting. What are our kids going to think they're going to think we weren't very productive at all. I mean, when we don't have, 5 AI chatbots trying to run half of what we do, or co-pilot programmers sitting here because I hate my practice management software in my practice, and I have to use a funky cloud, and I just want a web-based option. I could get something to kind of drive this.
You know what's beautiful about that, Dwight, what you just said, is that I always tell people, if I knew how to code, I would have been unstoppable, right? Absolutely. Because the ideas, and so Trey's laughing. It's just my arrogance, I know. But like I always say that was like my Achilles heel, is that I didn't know how to code. I would have these ideas, but then I'd be like, and it would be beautiful in my brain, right? But I could see the outcomes and the blah blah blahs and this and that, and then I would try and articulate to someone and hire someone to do it, and it just was like,
and then you would retreat to your basement, and you would not eat, and you'd never see the light of day, and you'd be a skinny, pale version of yourself.
100%.
Calling anybody that could understand you to be like, hey, you're the only one that understands what I'm doing. Let me tell you what I'm doing.
You get me.
Being somebody who's run a computer programming company, they're two very different people. Like I couldn't take some of those programmers out to lunch because they just literally wanted to be in a lights off room with their computers, as many screens as they could get. And they just wanted to hack in and out and go.
But think about the advancements now. I guess my illustration was like, think about like if that disrupts coding, and coding is the big place to disrupt. If you have an idea and now something can code for you to make that idea true, think of that. I guess that goes into the advancements of what they're talking about in this ARC pamphlet, PDF is that like there's no longer bottlenecks and impediments to innovation.
Yeah.
So anyway, so
here's
Trey,
a
we
thought
missed you.
to throw out there. Just this was in I want to say it was a book. I think it was called Things That Matter. It was like Charles Krauthammer, his favorite journal articles he ever wrote prior to him passing away. And there was a great one in there that was talking about civilizations so far advanced beyond us. And this was kind of a small pearl of another one of the articles he wrote. But it's are there civilizations that far advanced beyond us? And his comment was probably not, because they've long since innovated to destroy themselves. Then you sit there for a little bit and think, oh shit, yeah, that makes sense. You can innovate yourself into oblivion if you're not careful.
Sure, absolutely. That's just what happens.
Well, you know,
it's coming whether you want it or not. So if it's right, buckle up. If not, fantastic.
I mean, we've got to turn ourselves into the Terminator movie at some point, right?
Not even that. I mean, we're not going into war with the computers necessarily, but you can very easily destroy things by constantly innovating one thing after another.
Right.
And then here we are yearning for, the early 90s.
Well, it's the solution. To break it down, it's like the solution of the problem. We try and find a solution, but then it has its own side effects. It's like a medication, right? You come and you see a patient comes in, they have like 15 medications, and it's like, well, one medication was done to treat like acid reflux, but it also causes this and this and this. Now you're taking 2 medications to manage that.
Yeah.
And then
one was meant to treat the side effects of the first one.
Yeah. And then next thing you know, you're like, why am I taking 15 medications when I would have been fine with the heartburn at the start? But that's what happens. And that's just, we
cascade.
must solve every problem. There are some problems we don't need to solve. And I think that's a good point, Trey, that I think we keep pushing it.
So Trey, we missed you in Salt Lake, buddy. Missed you at the retreat.
A lot of good stuff from that.
How is next one you can't miss, bud? We're gonna do it again, the same place. So it's gonna be so next year you won't come. Don't have any more kids. Okay.
No, I'm done procreating. So
you're done.
I'm done. I pushed for number 4. I was met with violent opposition. I am a little premature.
Yeah, she doesn't have enough amnesia yet, right?
Yeah,
it's like that amnesia hasn't kicked in enough.
You already pushed like with the first month or 2. It's like,
well, I mean, it's like you said, we got to get productive. This is go time.
Hey, look at this. 2 of my kids are 11 months apart. My wife hated me.
Oh yeah.
Or 9 months. She's like, don't get freaking near me after this, baby, please, for the love of God. Anyway, from the mastermind, what I was going to say is, and Trey, I know you weren't there, so I'm going to just kind of, I'm going to give you the cliff notes. So obviously, we did it, and you were there at the Cabo one, right? And as I looked through my notes in the notes from the takeaways from Cabo, which was in October, versus the context of this, a lot of the same people there, the context of like the biggest issue, right? The key takeaway. So the key takeaway for me in the first mastermind, what I saw in everyone in all the notes was, Dwight, if you remember this term, the nucleus of everything.
Yeah.
Trey, do you remember everyone talking about that? Like that being kind of the big issue.
Yep.
And I've been there, you've been there, we've all been there in our career. And if I have so many thoughts going on in my head right now, but I think that is like the most debilitating feeling that you can have as a dentist, because growth means more of that. You feel like you're running on the treadmill, like you are the bottleneck of your growth, but you're also like the catalyst of your growth at the same time. And so it feels scary. And I contend this is where people throw their hands up, say F it, and do some kind of draconian move, which we're going to get to an exciting topic today. Something stupid. So it was great to see, Trey. Now you saw that context and you just said, yeah, I heard everyone, that was kind of the thing, was like, I feel like I'm in charge of everything. Everything comes through me. All the decisions are made through me. I don't have time to do anything. I have no free time. I have no life. My business is doing mediocre, and I'm just kind of treading water, and I don't feel like I'm living my best life. And so when I hear that kind of thing, for me, it gives me a lot of purpose in this kind of second wave, if you will, of my dental career, which is more kind of leaning in because I want to help extricate someone from that situation of feeling panicked and helpless, because have I been there.
Mhm.
Okay. And not to say that I have all the answers. The beautiful thing though, Dwight, was that at this second mastermind, didn't you see the evolution in 5 months? And it was so great. Trey, what we were seeing was, it was just, as opposed to like, it went from a feeling of like I have these scarce problems, meaning I'm the impediment. I'm everything. You see, I'm actually shaking because it's such a revelation
It
for
was
me.
powerful.
And then it moved to Trey. It moved to this better quality problems. How do I grow? It moved to this abundant problem. So they were stuck in this. Well, how do I buy a building? How do I grow this? How do I teach this? How do I lead this team member? How do I fire this team member? And it was like an attitude of abundance versus like this scarcity. I can't do it anymore. Did you pick up on that, Dwight?
So yeah, so what I noticed that really kind of blew my mind, and I think you saw me kind of pivoting around the table on this, was in 5 months, people worked so hard not to implement marketing strategies, all these other things, but trying to remove themselves from being that nucleus, empowering the team and kind of doing that. And you know what's funny? We had more personal conversations with people in the mastermind about, all of a sudden they had personal clarity about stuff that was going on in their personal life that was totally like getting totally pushed off because their business was consuming 100% of them. They could not, like, much less could they think about their vision and then be like, all right, well, here's the next thing. And then, oh, I want to do this. And maybe I would love to do building. And then people are like, I want a lake house. It's like, but it was all this.
Well, that became the what, like, so you blew over that. That became like the why. And I know we've made the illustration, like, I just want to be a football coach. And then like backfilling your life to fill that dream. Right. And so one of them finally says, like, honestly, I just want to be able to buy a lake house so I can have the same memories that I had growing up from my kids. And we were like, boom, that's a why, right? Because it gives you purpose beyond, I just want to make money. I just want to have 3 locations. I just want to do this, because that's not in a storm. That is going to be shaky ground, right? When there's going to be a metaphorical storm coming. So it was yeah, it was awesome. I don't know if it was
powerful.
What's cool about that is that everyone focuses, and we all know that, I mean, if you go into any program of some sort, everyone's going to tout vision as the first step. It's a, let's get a why, let's get a vision, let's move, let's lay out where we're going. But everyone does that and focuses on the core of their business. Everything becomes business related. It becomes, what can I do? It becomes more for the sake of more for some, whatever basically, because of that's what we are all trained to think in that regard. And you forget that the business is just a piece of the overall pie of your lifestyle. And you have to put that into the compartment. You have to compartmentalize it into the section where it belongs, and know that there are other pieces to lifestyle that are just as important, and they all complement each other. And it's the concept, that gets into the whole concept of work-life balance or work-life integration, where one necessarily, does one hurt the other, or does one complement the other? And what's awesome about that, what I hate about having to miss something, especially the ski trip with this group, is this is a group of people that you watch go through this. They're here to learn. And so when you put yourself in a group of people that all share that mindset, and you watch the growth that happens exceptionally quickly, and they walk through these steps very, you can almost predict the aha moments that start to happen, and they show up and get to the next one and then start bringing the next level problems. And you watch the scarcity to abundance mindset start to materialize. It is awesome to see.
Mm-hmm.
And this is what happens in our industry right now is, I remember, because Brad Tyner, he wouldn't mind me talking about it. He's in the mastermind, and he did this when I talked to him well before the mastermind started. He's a buddy of mine that I'd worked with him or interacted with him in several other CE groups and things like that. Brilliant mind, incredible dentist, and just a drive, an internal drive, huh?
Great profile.
Yeah, great profile, because it's just like Pete's profile. But that's why I said that. But the goal here is like, he was stuck, so stuck that he vulnerably talked about it in Salt Lake City with some other people. Was when Dwight called me and we were having this conversation, I was considering a sale because I was the nucleus of everything and I hated my business. People don't sell businesses they love. They sell businesses they hate. They sell teams they hate.
100%, Dwight. Keep on, preach.
And
Keep
that
going.
is the piece where we see time and time again, if you're stuck in the nucleus of your business, doesn't matter what you do, but in our world of dentistry, especially, you're the technician and you are the CEO and you are the office manager. You are all these things, and you've given other people titles, but you still are the bottleneck for their approval process or their systemization and their appreciation and their day-to-day, and their incentive is whether you like them or you're having a good day or not. Guess what? You will sell your practice. Because if not, what's the point? Who wants to live that life, or who can keep doing that and not lose themselves in their personal life?
You're saying how sustainable that is, right?
Yeah,
like that's not sustainable. And so it's, I love what you guys both had said. Trey, you're saying about putting people in that environment. And I said that, I actually thought that as we were in this room, because people are giving their specific examples of what's happening in their life, and the problems they have may not apply to you. Therefore you're thinking, well, how does this apply? This isn't for me. But yet you put yourself in this like pressure pot, meaning you get on a plane, you fly somewhere, you get out of your environment, you put yourself in an environment where you become vulnerable. And then you hear other people's problems, and then you hear group solutions. And then you vicariously adopt that to maybe something that you're thinking about, or maybe something that you didn't think about. Exactly. And so that in itself is like the power of a group, right? The power of the energy, the battery in the room. Remember I gave that analogy once, is like the battery in the room. Yeah. So it's really cool. The other thing I want to say is, like, it's funny how like we always think about problems, and then you think like happiness is going to be me on a beach. Happiness is the absence of problems. It's not. No. Happiness is kind of the evolution of your problems, meaning just endeavoring to get better quality ones, as opposed to I'm the nucleus of everything, to, hey, how do I get more hygienists as a problem? Or how do I get more locations? Or how do I invest in real estate? Right? You're finding problems that are better quality problems. And I think that's something to always remember. Dwight, what you said leads me into what I want to get, the fodder for today's podcast. We're finally getting there after 31. But it's okay. This has been awesome. This has been awesome. Yeah. Probably the best one ever. So here we're going to talk about something. And I tried on our text message to get a couple of you to be one camp and a couple of us to be on the other camp. And I don't think it's doable, as I sat here and thought about it. But the case for selling versus the case for not ever selling your practice. Okay? Because that is pervasive in our industry. Do I sell? Do I not sell?
It's everywhere.
And I kind of went through some things and did a little research and wrote down some things just to give us fodder. It's more than likely going to, well, who knows how much it goes into, but it is, as I've gone through this exercise, right, with let's just call it private equity suitors in the past, and I've gone through this exercise many times, just as you guys have, just as anyone has. It's eye-opening. Let me pause for a second. Let me collect my thoughts. If you're a dentist and you're growing, you get romantic about one day someone's going to give me this bananas offer, right? And that becomes like your drive, maybe. As going through this several times, and Trey, I think you alluded to kind of feeling the same way when we talked about this, right? Is that there's a lot of realizations when someone's willing to give you a check to walk away or to buy your business, and you have to pause for a second and think, who's the dummy here? Is it me or is it them? Right? Who's getting the best deal? And even when it's a bananas offer, let's just say, right? Something let's call it 250% of your top line revenue or 200% of your top line revenue. And you think like, holy shit, this is a lot of money. When you start to reverse engineer, okay, I'm going to get this up front, because it's not going to be all the money up front. We've talked about that ad nauseum on this pod, right? The cash at close is this, the stock you're going to get is this, unless you're selling from one person to another, at which point multiples and stuff don't go into play.
Right.
So you have to kind of reverse engineer. Okay, this is the cash at close is potentially all I'm going to get. Now my tax rate's going to be this. Okay. And now I'm left with X in the bank. How does that compare to the cash flow that you get from running a business. And I'm going to loop this back in, Dwight, to the nucleus of everything. You have to get yield somehow from that money that you make, right? Because if you're going now from being a business owner to a W-2 employee for X number of years, let's call it 3 to 5 years, right? You're still going to make money as a dentist because it's the cost of labor. But does that yield that you're going to get from investing in other people's business, whether it's a bond, the government's business?
Repeat that. People pay you for your business, yet you still have the money and you have to still put it in
other people's business. And the government, I say, is that the bonds are a business, right?
Yeah. Everything's business.
Stock market is a business. Private, alternate investments is a business. Like, you still have to, it's like the old expression, you have to have your money working for your money, working for more money, right? Good little soldiers that go out and do it. And let's just call it but here's the thing, is that you fall into a scarce mode because you're thinking, this was my life's work. I got this nest egg, and now I go into scarcity mode. Okay. And now, instead of trying to look for yields of 15%, you can't risk that. So you now need to look for yields of what are bonds doing? 4.5%, 5%. Right. So you better make sure that check that someone's willing to give you post taxes is enough that you're getting safe yield to live the exact same lifestyle that you're living now. That just covers the lifestyle thing. We didn't even talk about purpose, right? And things like that. So I want, to give context, and I'm going to shut up. Everyone listening, I again tried to form kind of two facets where it'd be two people. I think arguments are great in a public forum where one says this and one says this, and it's defending that. It just works better. It's just fun. But the four of us really couldn't come to a consensus on why we thought selling was ever the best idea. I mean, Dwight, so you're kind of shaking your head. Maybe. So let's do this. Let's talk about the advantages to selling potentially. Can we just hypothesize about why? Let's talk about the pros of selling and the cons of selling.
So right off the bat, go ahead.
Where are we starting? Which side?
Selling advantage, the advantage is to say, I want to sell everything. Screw it. I'm the nucleus of everything. I cannot do this anymore. I hate my practice. I want out. I want to sell.
So that's number one.
Offload responsibility.
Okay.
Responsibility, offload. And by nature, stabilization of the emotional turmoil of running your business.
Okay. All right.
Okay. Non-clinical, right? But the emotional turmoil of running a business, right? I think the delegation of that is probably the number one reason why people sell, because it's kind of like, even Bruce Baird talked about the fact that when, it was a political thing, right? Obama came in, I've got to pay for healthcare for everybody. And there was all this fear factor and all these things were coming along, and he got offered a check and he was like, yeah, because the world is we're too unsure of the world.
Uncertain, right? Uncertain times. Right. We've all heard that.
I think that's the biggie.
Okay.
Those to me are the two biggies as to why people say I've had enough. And in particular, like the craftsman style kind of doctors who are just like, I just want to do dentistry.
So offloading responsibility, you're saying, would be a reason. Okay, Dwight, in the scenarios where someone's coming to buy you and you have to stay on, do you think, Dwight and Trey, do you think you get to be absolved of those responsibilities? Do you think they're like, okay, we got it. As a leader, you no longer have to lead the practice or be involved in conversations of solutions. Like, you no longer have to be here. Do you think that happens?
I think owners, getting the chance to get some money in your pocket and put stock into something. The idea is that the owner gets to be an associate or feel like an associate, like step back and just do clinical. And maybe some of the HR stuff comes off of you, maybe these other issues, but you still have to live and breathe and practice with the team who's now getting managed by another entity. So you're still going to be the go-between person. You're still the interactor, right? So I agree with you.
Yes, there is a de facto leader of any team, whether it is your responsibility or not. And being the doctor tends to put you there, whether you want to be or not, if you're not good at delegating that.
So if you're de facto, are you offloading? I'm trying to.
What I would get at there is there's a staged answer to that, because it's a difference between a guy who's running $1 million practice with a decent
Very
bottom
different.
line,
Yeah.
and someone that's running a $15 million operation that has a very different program, that has a management company or anything else.
Okay.
And there is a point at which the leadership of the $15 million so-called leader, or the driver of that organization, is going to be what they're after in many cases. And they will leave you in place to keep that going. And then there is a point at which, yes, there is some at that $1 million level, or that good practice that's trucking along. You are still there, but your liability is different. Your responsibility is different. But yes, you are still involved. But I think there is a staged part of that, and we have to keep that in mind, because they're two very different scenarios.
The other thing I think that gets into people's brains is the quote concept of the ROI potential. Meaning, if I bind myself with
Yes.
these other guys, and the potential of maybe not the first bite at the apple, but the second bite.
Complex.
It's so dumb that down to the fact that if it all works out,
If it all works
you
out.
get what you're promised. And let's assume that, they lay it out, this is what's happening, and you actually get to go along for the ride and get what you're
So
promised.
what Dwight is saying for the audience is basically what they call in the world of private equity is the recap scenarios, where you are bought with someone for cash plus stock into this private company, in the hopes that they are going to be able to roll up more people like you to get to a critical mass to then attract the buyer for a bigger private equity, right? So it's a recapitalization of your stock, at which point then that will trigger an event where your stock gets paid out, right? At which point you might be able to roll into the next one and take a third bite of the apple. So the first bite of the apple was selling majority share of your practice, or pretty much all your practice. Second bite was potentially when there's a recap. Third will be, and this is a 5 years, and then another 5 years from that would be the third recap. Dwight, sorry, I just didn't want to gloss over that.
And I'll even give an even easier example within my own ecosystem. I had a doctor that had a small single practice in an outskirt area. He joined our practice. He only had a 5%. He inserted his whole practice, the whole value of his practice, to us, which was probably worth a 2.5, 3 multiple. It wasn't a single practice. But when he merged it with us, he then owned 5% of the holding co. And now the multiple of that same value of that practice was now a 4 or a 5 or a 6 because of the size of our ecosystem. So again,
that was the arbitrage of him for him.
They're doing the arbitrage.
That's not arbitrage unless you sell.
Correct.
Unless you realize the equity. So,
I know, but think of it for him, even immediately when he retires, it's more value as a part of our ecosystem than what it ever would have been.
All by
so that would be never sell those, what he's saying. If you never sell.
That would be the piece that I would touch on, though, Dwight, is that guy that sells the $1 million practice typically has an opportunity to maximize the value of his practice in terms of what he brings in as he checks out. That is where I think there is a positive in that regard. You get a little bit more than if you just sold on the open market.
True.
In a private equity format, you're saying, Trey.
Yeah, and I wouldn't even go into a private equity format. Let's go to a strategic buyer where you're selling to say a bigger DSO, where you're just plugging in. And
well, I want to put a pin in that, because you're saying you're getting more. Your enterprise is valued for more, but whether or not you get those funds, right? So you may in a PE or strategic environment, $1 million practice potentially they'd say, look, we'll give you $2 million. Right, but we're only going to give you the $1 million up front, and then $5 million, the rest of it's going to be in stock and hold back and performance issues. So it sounds sweeter, because as the person who has the $1 million practice saying, hey, that's twice as much, right? All you've heard in that conversation is $2 million, and you immediately psychologically start spending the money. What am I going to do with this? How am I going to do it? What am I going to do? Am I buy a beach house finally? I'm going to buy this lake house finally, right? Versus the person who's kind of sitting on $1 million practice. Let's say you sell it for 700. After taxes, you're probably sitting on 450. Okay. Getting yield on that 450. How much is 7% of $450,000 a year? Right. It's about $30,000 a year.
Yeah.
That's not retirement money for folks.
No.
Right. So let me give you a pro on how if you are early, right? I'm going to talk about the time value
If you're
of money.
early, this is
If
good.
you are early and you have created a juggernaut of a practice, and you can, put along a bunch of money on the sideline. I actually heard a couple stories where someone could put a bunch of millions on the sidelines in their 30s. And I'm like, okay, maybe that makes sense, right? The time value of money for that is that they get to now do nothing on that. And potentially that money, the rule of 72, that money is going to double X number of years, right? And so maybe that would be a case for, I'm trying to do the pros. And the other pro would be if you're young, and it is that thing, if your non-compete is somewhat limiting and you're feeling like you got a lot of gas in the tank, and let's say you sell and you have either no non-compete or maybe one that's only a couple of years or 3, you can go do it again.
Absolutely.
Right. And so it's step and repeat. But you got to have the chops and feel like you can do this. And it wasn't, lightning didn't strike just once. It can strike twice. And so many times I've seen how many entrepreneurs have you seen that think because they had success in one exit of their business, they're like, I can do anything. I'm bulletproof. I can open it. And then they waste all the legendary money they made on kind of the endeavor too, because it was an ego thing.
Absolutely.
Yeah, the next
So
thing.
the cons also of selling. Let's go over the cons real quick. I know there are many. I think one of the biggest things is like, now what, right? Let's say you're in your 30s and you sell. Let me give that same example. Like now what do you do the rest of your life? Okay, maybe you can do it again. Okay, maybe you don't need to do anything again. If you're older and you sell it, you still need purpose, right? Because it almost insulated so much of who your entire being was. Like you associate, like my dad was a pilot, right? He associated everything he did. And, he was when he had to work, he was a pilot. He was a captain at Delta. And right. And then when you retire, you leave that environment. It's like, wait a second. I don't have all these, flight attendants admiring me and people walking through the airport, like being like, holy cow, look at the pilot coming, right? You're going to miss that environment is where I'm going. And so we start to lose purpose. I'm not trying to ramble, guys. I always think that I'm talking too long.
No. This is
Very
kind
valid.
I think this is the piece that most people forget that they will lose, and that we all have to have fulfillment requires purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And personal, individualized, day-to-day, weekly, monthly, annual fulfillment requires purpose.
So the thing, Dwight, you're saying is that potentially the catalyst of being the nucleus of everything could be the thing that's actually giving a lot of pleasure and enjoyment if you were to remove yourself. Meaning, talked about Trey being romantic about having to give the wife enough time to think about the amnesia of it. Once you get out of that, right, and that pregnancy's gone for 9 months, she's like, you know what, that was a really enjoyable time. Maybe we should do it again, right? Yeah. So maybe a far-fetched example, but yes, you see this a lot. You see this a lot is the purpose. And I had this conversation. I went to lunch with my kind of private banker yesterday, and he was saying how he sees this a lot is, it feels good to look at those zeros in your bank account. And then the next week it's like, what do I do?
Yeah.
What do I do with my life? I had this beautiful place where I led people and I was able to dig in and make experiences and a great cash flow machine and a golden egg. And I was writing things through my business. Now I can do none of those, right? Because I don't own it.
How long can you actually be? If you took a month-long vacation right now, at what point in time would you be itching to get back to your business, right? Or do you prefer to take those in doses and build a business that allows you to take those more frequently, or take off when your kids are off, or they from school or things like that, right? There's this balance piece, right? But I think one of the bigger net cons that we do need to talk about, besides even the piece of purpose, is these are really smart business people offering you a certain multiple to buy your practice. And if they're offering you that kind of money, these Wharton Business School people showing up, knocking on your door and being like, hey, by the way, 25% of our investors require that our portfolio is in healthcare. Therefore, we need to buy more dental practices or healthcare related, blah, 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 blah. All they really care about is, okay, well, how much is Pete going to earn in the next 7 or 10 years? Great. I'll pay you for a 7 to 10 year multiple upfront so that you have that balanced money. But they're just paying you the money. If you've got the runway to stick those 7 to 10 years, then sell it after you've got that money. And
that's the kind of the model I gave to it. I love that you bring this up, right? Because if someone, and this is a very simple way to think about it. If someone's taking your EBITDA, right? So let's take your EBITDA, and someone's like, I'm going to get a 10X, which is astronomical. We don't hear that much in dentistry anymore. All that means is someone's paying you for 10. If you flatline your practice, Someone's paying you for 10 years of earnings. So it would be the exact same as if you waited 10 years, got that money, and then you could almost walk away from the practice. It would be the exact same outcome almost, right?
Exactly. And you'd be able to sell it from there. That's
3X
why
would mean 3
runway is
years.
so dependent.
Or
like
keep
you
it.
have to decide your runway.
Or keep it.
And still cash flow.
Here's another con that we don't think about. The consequences to your team and your patients.
Yeah. Beautiful.
Right? And we do think about that, right? People get concerned at the signing table about, holy shit, what about my patients? Holy shit, what about my team? You know, but it's something that's nice to think about. Like that is a con. And guess what? That is a highly unknown variable. You hear good stories about when that happens, and you also hear the horror stories about what happens to the people and the patients and the care. Yeah. And so I would think that is, you know, again, a big con of selling. Other thing would be you become a W-2 employee. And I know that's not a big deal, but like you took the risk to be a business owner so that you could afford the benefits of taking risks, right. So that you could have favorably putting things through, whether it's insurances or the business benefits or things that you got. Right now you really don't have the benefit of using the tax law to your advantage because you're deficient in that. Okay.
Not to mention you're a W-2 employee. Which, like you said, that's not that big a deal. That's one of the biggest deals to me.
Yeah.
I don't want to play in the sandbox with someone, you know, in someone else's sandbox, basically.
Yeah.
So
and how much are you paying on taxes? How much are you getting paid? Usually about 25% is what the going rate at most DSOs are, what they're going to pay you of what you're collecting. And on top of that, you're going to be paying taxes in a different mindset. I mean, it just is what it is.
I think a lot of this is, we never say this, or we don't say it enough. And I think this needs to get touched on a lot more because we're in an environment where people are looking to solve their problems and move to the next level, which means they're putting out the negatives. And now we're solving the problems and trying to move them forward. Everything you talked about in Salt Lake. But I love my business. I wouldn't say everything about it, but I would pretty much tell you that I love what I do more than the vast majority of people love what they do. Why do I want to get rid of that? I mean, and as a dentist, think of as a dentist. I've always said this: you go in and see so many people, and you're able to bullshit in the hygiene columns, and you get to have a smattering of humans, you know, life every day. How many people hate their job? It's staggering how many people hate their job. It's unbelievable. Really. So knowing that, I don't want to go, you know, what am I going to do with, and this is, you know, this is obviously, you know, first world problems type situations, but if you get a little bit more money, what are you going to do with it? All the things we talked about, you got to deploy it first off, but at what level do you jump to your next level of, let's call it lifestyle from a spending perspective?
Yep.
I mean, if you're happy where you are, more for the sake of more is really dangerous.
Yeah, it's the hedonic treadmill, right?
That's right.
I also want to introduce another topic if I can. I think
another topic? Are we staying on with the sell or not to sell?
Concept affiliated to this topic.
Okay.
If I said to you, if I was doing this business alone, I may be more likely to sell. Let me define alone.
Wait, when you say this business, meaning if you were doing
hypothetically, if I was doing a dental practice
by yourself,
I was the clinician.
Yep.
I was the business owner, and I was doing this alone. And what I mean by that is not my team, because I got to manage them. They're all employees, right? You're not. If I wasn't a part, I'm not joking when I say collaborating, even on this podcast, talking about my business. There are bad freaking days. Right. There are amazing days, but I like to say, like, when you're an associate, your day can be a +10 and a -10, right? It can range in there because things happen, bad patient care, some messed up, patient's upset, or, you know, but as a business owner, it's like a +100 and a -100 because it can do that, right?
That's wondering where you're going with this.
It's a high probability, right? So if I was doing this just out of vulnerability with all of you, if I was doing this alone, it's one of those things where the collaboration, the masterminds, like I can't do this alone. I can't, not that I can't run the business alone, but that I can't mentally and emotionally constantly feel like I'm the only one dealing with the problem. And because the problems are deep and they're all focused on me being that nucleus. And what this
Mhm.
practice does and what this business type does is that it throws you at the top through education and through titles and doctor and all this other garbage. And then it forces you to be a great business person, which we are not. And or normally in the industry. And it keeps going down this road where all the pressure keeps piling and it feels like you're all alone doing it all by yourself. And I think that is the main reason why people choose to delegate, people choose to sell, choose to do those things. But I can tell you right now, I've run other businesses in other industries. This is a very lonely business. Very, very lonely if you're not out there and about and saving yourself, interacting with other dentists or interacting with other business owners within this industry. I struggle
You're
with
saying
the
without let me just fill it down,
Please.
Dwight. You're saying without collaboration and kind of a brotherhood, sisterhood in this industry, you would have bailed.
I would have gone into another industry.
Okay.
Because the truth
So-
is that the ROI.
But that's not like an attractant to our profession. Meaning, like, that is not the reason that a lot of people got into, like, dentistry is awesome because I get to
Correct.
collaborate with all my colleagues.
Yeah.
If anything,
Yeah.
I think it's the exact opposite.
Yeah. Isolationism,
Sorry,
introversion.
let me
Well,
clarify
yeah, I don't
that
think
because I
it's
don't
the
want to get
opposite.
roasted. Sorry. The reality becomes the opposite. I'm not saying that is the attractant. I'm not saying that
Correct.
the opposite is the attractant. I'm saying that is actually what happens is that a lot of us get in a silo for 25 years. And it's like, you forgot to get in a study club, and you forgot to get in a mastermind, and you forgot to get in this group.
Super easy.
And all of a sudden now you're like, dude, this is a lonely place.
Yeah, it's an unknown piece that when you signed up for this gig, you didn't realize that was what was happening, or that was very likely to happen.
And in medicine, right, you don't have that because typically you're in the hospital setting and you're collaborating and you're doing case theory with other people and look at this case with me. And
Absolutely.
so I get it. I get that, Dwight. I get that. So that's something to, well,
but
you're
you
right.
got to be careful though, because that could be a legitimization of the cell. Be a part of something bigger.
It also could be a legitimization of expansion.
Correct. They could. Very true.
Which is why the three of us have gotten
and everybody's different. You got to keep in mind that there are going to be people where a sale.
If you're lonely, go buy some friends. Go buy some friends to put in your bigger house. That's, if you're lonely in the go buy some associates. Hire some associates. Buy some more.
I think it's
all the
easy.
Things. Buy some friends. I was trying to make the analogy, buy some friends, but that came off wrong.
There's so many places we can go with buy some friends.
True.
This could be a great rabbit hole.
Buy meaning spend on the infrastructure, right? And then encourage people to come is what I meant.
I feel like dentistry has this natural ability to make you that nucleus of everything, and then you are stuck and your problems seem too big and you can't get out of them, do these things. And I think this is the majority. Like you said, it was the number one topic that we evaluated over the last 5 months with Mastermind. It keeps to be the recurring problem. Everybody shows up at the Mastermind wanting all the marketing fixes. And then although those are there, it's not what we end up talking about. I think it's just because it's that loneliness factor that, I can walk outside and run into pretty much any doctor out there. I'd be like, hey, do you happen to know my brother, Christian Peccora? He's a pain doctor. He was like, oh, yeah. I ran into him at this ambulatory center and then this, and then he's in the surgery, and it's just, there is this unity concept,
community,
right? And that's just the natural tendency of it. When in dentistry, I can walk in and out of my office and not have to interact with anybody. And then there's this fake concept, like what you're talking about, that because you're meeting new patients every day, or all your patients coming in and out, and you've got a team of people and it's a small office, like, is what it is. I'm like you. We had to build a large infrastructure. All three of us have built multi-location, multiple doctors working for us, big entity structures. Like, we love gathering places, where we can kind of get everybody together. But I think some of that, it's also because we love to collaborate. We know that we would have been stuck and not enjoyed it if we were doing it all by ourselves. That's just how we are. And it's not just our personality. I think it's also a natural trait of the industry. It just is, right?
Okay. So here we are. We're at 58 minutes, and we're about to talk about the pros and cons of not selling our business. we've illustrated by the counterpoints of some of the cons of the push for selling. We've illustrated some of the advantages for not selling. Okay, so I think when we touched on this, the biggest advantage for not ever selling your business, or not on any horizon for you, is that that cash flow that you have inside your business is going to be exceedingly hard to recreate. And that goes back to the illustration of what I said about, if someone gives you a large check, take out the taxes and then find that yield. The yield you get inside your business is the cash flow.
Correct.
I know I'm stating the obvious for you guys, but when you
it's two stocks.
Do the math.
Yes. It's two stocks. You either take the cash and put it in an alternative investment that yields you a certain amount per month, or you put it in your business stock. I put it back into my Fort Bend dental stock and I never sell it. I keep it there and I see what yield that gives me every month. That's what you're trying to break it down. Two types of stock: investing here, investing out.
Well, I think you're making it more complicated than it has to be, right? Meaning that, like, here's an asset that gives me more dollars, that gives me X amount of dollars. Here's something that I converted that asset into a big check, which I then still need to get converted into more dollars. And you compare the bucket size, right? And I'm just saying, if you do the math, it's scary, right? And so you have this business that, and obviously the reason that, and Dwight, you said this, the reason that people, that private equity and Wall is everyone is tripping over their genitalia to get to you is because I'm trying to keep it PG. Genitalia? It just sounds so much better to say dick, but like, whatever, keep it clean. Is that right? That is a rarity in the world, right? A cash producing business, right? That's stable, quote unquote, recession and pandemic stable. And so that is the biggest pro.
It's a safe stock.
Let me put that in different words. One of these deals is built for you, and one of these deals is built for someone else.
Very good.
That's pretty much all there is to that. Very good. One of them you're at the bottom, one of them you're at the top. Which one do you want to be?
Interesting.
And not to mention, let's add the next layer of it. That's,
so no one's ever doing it in benefit of you, Trey? You're saying no one's ever giving you a check as charity?
I mean, I'm
it's
still
rhetorical. I'm kidding.
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I get it.
I'm still
well,
waiting.
the point you're saying is you've got two batches of money, right? What's the yield here? What's the yield there? The only problem with that argument is the yield of the sale is coming from the cash flow that your business is going to give you if you hold on to it.
Yeah. So okay. The next thing, obviously, we touched on again is the tax advantage situation of owning a practice, right? And whether or not that's, everyone knows what that means, but inside that, maybe you have some real estate control, some owner occupied real estate. You then can leverage some cost segregation, some bonus depreciation. You start taking advantage of the tax-based code, which the biggest expense in all of our lives is taxes. Right. And so finding ways to mitigate that legally through the confines of the document that they provide to us is incumbent upon you to do so. Okay. And so owning a business is one of the greatest ways to optimize. See, I didn't say like avoid, but optimize against the code, or for the code, I should say.
I don't want you to jump over what you just said. I'm interrupting you because of this. He said one important thing, and if I asked everybody, and Randy did this, Randy Smith came to us and asked us in the mastermind at Salt Lake City, and he came and spoke for a little bit, and he asked, what's your biggest expense? And people started saying, well, my mortgage, or my this, I was like, no, it's tax. Your biggest expense is tax. So start at the top. What is the one thing that you want? The same way you look at your business and your profit and loss statement, or your balance sheet in your business, you should look at your personal financial statement in the same way. How do I reduce my largest expense? My largest expense is still tax. And so I thought that was really intriguing. That was a little tidbit that, the luxury of being in the mastermind, you got to hear that. That is huge. So don't glaze over what you just
on the pod coming up here soon. And actually, Dwight, because it was so transformative for a lot of people from a financial acumen standpoint, he's speaking at the summit now. But we'll put him on the pod. But it's so eye opening, right? And I said, look, guys, I'm learning, you're learning. No one taught us this shit. No one in dental school taught us this school. Some of our parents didn't teach us this. Some of our parents might have, but like no one taught us this shit. So do not be ashamed that you don't know what cost segregation means. Do not be ashamed that you don't know what tax optimization means. Do not be ashamed of anything, because we're all here. Figure this shit out.
Yeah.
So let me keep going, unless you guys have any other comment on that.
Go for it.
The biggest pro for not is the freedom of direction. And I thought about this. I literally sat on a table away from electronics today, and I really had like write this stuff down. What are pros and cons, and think about it, because I think it's interesting. And for me, I came up with the freedom of direction. And what I mean by that, let me unpack this just real quickly.
Okay.
Is that I can either optimize for my profits. Now I have a business. I can optimize for profits. I can hustle. I can go. I can optimize for time. I can optimize for relationships, or I could optimize for growth, meaning going back to the tax advantage situation, buying more assets inside of the vehicle of my business. So I have four freedoms now that I can exercise by having the encumberment, quote unquote, of owning, right? Having this big nucleus of everything. Now I have four freedoms that are afforded to me by this.
This is so good. I think
four freedoms, right? Maybe
freedom
two
of
of those.
direction is a great summary statement, because
The what? Freedom of direction.
Freedom of direction is a great summary statement, because I will tell you, when I said, it's a positive 10, a negative 10 to be an associate, it's a positive 100, negative 100 potential as an entrepreneur, as an owner. The truth is you're more likely, because of the freedom of direction, to justify the bad days. And you can flip them into good days, because you're like, great, I'm building something. But if you're just an associate, or you sold off to private equity and you have a bad day, what are you justifying? Right? You're just like, it's a job. I'm doing what I can. Right?
You're doing your time, right, Dwight?
Yeah.
Meaning you're putting in the time because someone gave you a check. You're putting in the 3 years. You're counting the days until you're out of jail, so to speak.
Yes. And opportunity is what I think is the key to that freedom of direction, is just like, hey, I'm having a bad day. And it's probably worse. Like, I had an associate ask me yesterday, or walked by, he was like, hey, I just heard like what the last 3 people just walked in and asked you to make like just a random opinion on. One of it was like, concealed carry in the office. Are employees allowed to have concealed carry? The kind of topics that we have in Texas, right? or things like that, right? And we're going down these things, and he just gave me knuckles. He's like, so glad I'm not making those decisions right now, or not. So glad that's not like in between my patients, or whatever. And it made me laugh.
Seems pretty awesome to me.
Yeah. So, but for you and I, it's like a direct conversation related to that. I could also not answer any of those, because I have freedom to just be like, no, not a topic I really want to tackle today. But
or just no, right? The freedom to say no.
Moving on. Yes. It doesn't really matter. And so that's the freedom of it, as opposed to being told, hey, by the way, here's the protocol. This is what you have to comply with. This is how it works. And that could turn into a kind of a daily bad day, but I have no opportunity to change it. I have no control.
Right to choose. I think one of the things, Pete, that you talk about the four freedoms of direction in that regard, that's essentially how you build your lifestyle. You can design your lifestyle based on how you want to design your business. And those freedoms and those levers you get to pull can directly correlate to how you want to live your life. And that is dramatic in terms of being able to escape the hamster wheel that people feel like they're on, where they're working to live. And now you can flip that on its head and go down that live to work path. But you end up with, and I'll close with this on that thought. I just wrote a letter to a doc that went and bought her own practice, and it was very congratulatory with one, big theme in there that I think is very good, that I was mentioning from my own experience. And as I've learned more about myself building a business than any other aspect of what I've done, it was the greatest education I've ever had.
Very good.
Because I am able to pull those levers in whatever order, in whatever direction, and as far as I want. So it allows me to to make mistakes, to trip over my dick or genitalia, as Pete wants to call it. Genitalia.
Tripping over genitalia.
But you get to make those mistakes, and no one's over your shoulder saying, why did you do this? What happened? Instead, you're saying, man, I fucked up. How do I learn from it? And how do I take that and be better next time? So that's
how did I just kick my own ass? I need to figure that out.
That's right.
Yeah, I think that is so good. The concept that you are a better person than you've ever been because you had to struggle through some of those things. I mean, there's a lot of things that we're battling in our personal lives that are easier decisions, or we're more able to weather those storms because we've weathered some things in our business. I think that's brilliant. I think that's so true. I like that.
Yeah. So, I mean, really, I could go over the cons, but we've kind of illustrated the cons and by advantages of being the pros in the first con. So it's like, you're feeling unbalanced. The cons may be like just to not selling is that you're feeling unbalanced from an equity situation, meaning the majority of your net worth is wrapped up in an asset that you are uncomfortable from, quote unquote, back to Dwight's example, uncertain times, the Bruce Barrett example, uncertain times. You don't know what's coming. We never know what's freaking coming, by the way, but you're concerned because 95% of your net worth potentially is wrapped up in this juggernaut practice you built. I get it. So too many eggs in one basket. Your cons of not selling, but you're too stressed and you're overwhelmed because you're the nucleus of everything. And then I have retirement age on here because I think there's pros and cons to both. Like we talked about the early advantage, but in the late scenario, you don't have the time value of money anymore. You don't have, so you better it's just the basket of money that someone's giving you because you don't have the power of compounding interest.
That's true.
So I sped over those. What did you say?
So that's true, but you have a cash producing asset. So when you learn to unlock the asset, even at the retirement age, it can travel on indefinitely.
Right.
And because of that, why sell the practice, invest it to draw cash coming out? When you
the interesting thing is like selling, we think of selling as being the only liquidity event that's available. Right? Here. And Dwight, you're both smiling and laughing big if you can't see this. It's like, it's not this 100% or 0%, right? Like I have fractionally allowed investment in my practice 8 times with 8 different partners and 8 different entities. I have lots of partners because I like riding with people. I like, Dwight, to your point, I like collaborating, like I got this, you do that, divide and conquer. Let's do it. Right. Let me focus on what I'm good at. You focus on what you're good at, and let's go optimize for each other, so to speak. Right. And so there are many ways to liquidity events, partial liquidity events. Just, I guess what I'm trying to say is in closing, if you're selling the entire kit and caboodle, be careful, because back to Trey's line, it's probably not set up to benefit you.
Absolutely.
Without a doubt.
If I'm adding one last item to that,
please.
In our industry, there's a lot of ego and a lot of roostering and all like banging our chest about what we've done.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why everybody hears about all the glory stories of selling and taking 2 bites of the apple and this and that. But I know Pete and I, for example, we've talked about friends of ours and people we know that the story was the exact opposite.
Right.
Others who fully invested said, no, I'll put all the stock in, or I'll put the majority of what you're buying me out in, and ended up collapsing, going the other direction. And that's not a fear tactic. That's me literally saying that, like with all business, there's a full gambit of potential risk that comes along with that. And I think it's really, really important. The only people who are yelling from the hilltops about selling is because they had a really good experience.
Right.
But I know some people who are getting back into the business because they lost everything trying to sell.
Yelling from the
because they gave control. They gave the keys to the kingdom to someone else, and someone lit that kingdom on fire. Right. Yeah. And they still had some equity in that castle, so to speak.
Correct.
Right. And you're right. We do have a couple of examples of mutual friends who have they're having to get back in. Like Trey said, having to play catch up sucks. Distant seconds, having to play catch up late in your career because you made a potentially catastrophic decision.
Yeah.
Where you gave the control, you have no one to blame because you're not in control. So now you're just hoping and praying things go well. And that that personally would be more of a stressful and anxiety ridden situation than, oh my gosh, I am the nucleus of everything.
Yeah.
Meaning that my future was predicated on the decisions of someone else versus I need to implement and orchestrate my way out of this temporary problem that I have of being the nucleus of everything. And the answer is not selling. The answer is
That's
optimizing
100%
and working every day to get yourself out of the situation of being the nucleus, not because you don't love dentistry. People hear me loud and clear. It's because it's incumbent upon you to focus on things that you are sustainable doing and that wakes you up. And then you have to keep yourself in bed in the morning. You wake up and you're like, oh my God, stay in bed. I know the alarm hasn't gone off yet. You're just so excited to start your day. When you hit that, that's where the good shit. Just do that forever.
Keep in mind to put my last little pin in it, or my last little spin on it. This is in vogue right now.
What's in vogue?
Selling.
Is it?
Yes.
I feel like it's shifting back, Trey. Maybe that's my own confirmational bias.
I think that is your confirmational bias.
Okay.
What you're always finding is you're finding that everybody is discussing it. And why is everybody discussing it? Because everyone else is discussing it. It's an option on the table right now because you're in the right industry in the right time where we have consolidation and now you have opportunity, so-called, that is presented to you. But the one thing when you really start to dig deep and sit down with people and start questioning them, none of them understand what's going on. So you have a lot of fear of missing out, more so than you have a legitimate, well thought out, due diligence performed decision saying this is the best option for me. And that's why, yes, you have people shouting from the hilltops. It worked out for them. But nobody's standing around shouting from the hilltops saying it didn't. And the vast majority of people I've spoken to
because of shame, you're saying,
don't like it. Yeah, they're not out there going, they're not getting on a podcast. I got my ass kicked. I hate this. This is terrible. I lost everything. I wish I'd never done it. By the way, I love you, investors. Oh,
yeah, I love you guys. Don't sue me. Don't sue me.
So you don't hear the negatives. It's the bad shit that goes swept under the rug and no one's really out there voicing it. Make sure you do due diligence on it. And there are certainly situations where a sell is a great option. And it is perfect if it makes sense.
I would say that's the exception rather than the rule.
I agree.
Okay.
I agree.
Okay.
I think that's 100% correct.
Agreed.
You would agree? Agreed. It's exception. You're right. For certain situations like we've illustrated, it might make sense. And I'm not saying don't ever do it. I'm just saying, like,
stop it cool?
Yeah, like honestly, like I used to get forwarded all these solicitation emails from PE, and some of them are like, oh, this is cool. It feels nice to be wanted. One a week, come in, somebody like, oh, I'll talk to this person, see what they have to say. I literally instructed Kim. I was like, shut that. Don't send me any more emails from those people. I don't even want to see them because I don't give a shit because it can't be sweet enough. It can't be sweet enough.
No.
I mean, I guess realistically, could it? Sure. But like within reality, it can't be sweet enough based on the sweetness of the situation that we have here. Going back to the 4 freedoms, the freedom to do whatever we want. Or me and my partners have the freedom to do whatever we want in the practice.
And if it was that sweet of a deal, do you know what the expectations are?
Yeah, right. Well, no.
Quoting a friend of ours who was like, I thought, oh yeah, we can do that. And then they disrupted my whole team. I lost my whole team. And then there was no way I was hitting those expectations on a year-to-year basis for me to get the rest of my buyout. And I got 40% of what I was promised.
Yep.
That stuff happens. So the sweeter the deal, listen, these people have gone to business school. They run businesses in every industry enterprise out there. These are consolidators, right? This is good stuff.
Trey, you have anything else in close before I tip off the just announcements and things like that? Anything else in closing? I think that was great. I think all we can do is dilute the points at this point, guys. That was great. Honestly, I got to say this, and I know I make jokes a lot. That was one of my most favorite pods, and I'm sorry that Craig wasn't here, kind of because it sucks. I mean, Craig's getting some vitamin D right now on vacation. True. And I'm sorry he wasn't here for that because I think that was going to be very transformative. And I've gotten lots of cool feedback from a lot of dentists, direct message and stuff like that, from like even reps that kind of recommend this to dentists because it's helping a lot of people. So if you're one of those people, like definitely give us feedback because that's kind of some oxygen for us. Other thing is, and I'm not sure we've been doing a good job promoting, but the summit is open.
Yeah.
It's
Got
evolving. I mean, maybe it is. Maybe some of the bumpers within the summit's evolving. It's going to be awesome. It's going to be in Vegas. The format is different. If you've been to one, it's not going to be the same. Exciting speakers, exciting curriculum, more team building, more team collaboration, more team accountability, bringing your team. It's in the fabulous Win. We have the entire theater, which is quite the bar.
Crazy.
Right. It's evolved from a little first time we ever did a summit,
Big
guys.
time, bro.
It was in a little St. Regis room at in Atlanta. And now it's evolved into the theater at the Win, which is cool because I know we've talked about this. The Win is spectacular in Vegas. Bring your team. The room rates are $250, which if you go on Expedia right now, they're like $1,000, or they were, which is just a no brainer. So the rooms will definitely sell out.
Yeah,
the rooms will sell out. It might be hard to sell out the theater of the Win, but the room block that we have, I think we have, I think 250 rooms, 300 rooms, nights.
But still, it will go fast.
It will go fast. And the supply is already done. So again, check it out, bulletproofsummit.com. Like I said, Randy's going to speak. Dwight, you're speaking. Trey, I'm sure we're going to have you on stage a tremendous amount.
I'm there to look good.
That's right.
I'm the face of the organization.
You're what we call bulletproof eye candy.
Yeah.
I know why y'all have me here.
There's going to be a startup. Trey Miller, who's kind of been our unicorn startup in the mastermind. He and Bonner are going to be having a startup kind of like evolution speech, which I think is just awesome.
So good.
Dwight, I'm going to push you in to kind of have a KPI talk because we had a great one today in the mastermind office hours, like evolving into making it simple, not more complex.
Yes.
So again, I know it's 6 months away, but do not hesitate because these early bird things are going to go away. The rooms are going to go away. Don't delay and think that like this is going to be available forever. So because it's not
going to be great, man.
Be
awesome.
And that's it, guys. That was all. I know we're kind of pushing up against 80 minutes now. I'm looking at my counter and it felt like the time.
It's worth it, man. That's a huge topic. I don't think there are very many topics that need that much oxygen, but that one does.
Well, Dwight, I have a little sweaty back because I was going of the mindset of trying to break things into multiple episodes of pods where they get too long. And I was like, no one wants to listen to a long pod in a long format. And then we started getting crushed on YouTube comments. Like, what are you guys trying to do? Like this guy's method of like, trying to optimize for clicks and shit.
Yeah.
I was like, no, I just was trying to optimize for efficiency that it's a lot to take in. So we are no longer will post in part 1 and part 2. Hear me loud and clear. Thank you, Mr. who made that recommendation.
I can appreciate that.
I hear you loud and clear. I can appreciate that. And we need to do a better job. I also got some feedback. We need to do a better job because there's 4 of us of not talking over each other, right?
Yeah.
Because we all have good stuff to say. Trey's like, fuck you.
I told y'all a long time ago, you're like, you should talk more. I was like, if I talk more, I'll fuck your whole podcast up. I got 4 people talking over each other. So I figure I will be the voice of fucking reason here to stay quiet. Plus, I'm right and all of y'all are wrong. So that is also an issue.
I got to be quiet because I let Craig interrupt you, Pete. It's just too much fun to watch y'all do it. I just
oh, no. You and I are like animals clasping for oxygen. Like, let me talk.
I'm here to watch.
That's funny.
Content is king. I love this concept though, because these are the types of pods that we need. And same thing goes
long format.
These are good things. And I think a lot of what the long form stuff to us, it gets you deeper into the topic on things that typically aren't discussed.
There you go.
Yeah. Even if it takes you a few days to like scroll through it because you're drive to work or whatever, like you're listening to it as you go, but it's a lot of content. It just is. And these are the concepts that are being talked about. So we need it. I know I need it. This was great for me. Because we even ourselves need that reminder of like, hey, it's like when we did our predictions podcast, it's like, let's think about what's coming this year. Like,
yeah.
Stop and think about it. So this is great.
All right, brothers.
Good to see
you, besties.
Great
talking to you. Good times. All right, guys. Thanks for joining us on another episode, and we'll see you next time.